Good morning, everybody. My name is Beth Savicki with CenterState CEO, and I want to personally thank you all for being with us this morning. This is our fourth in a series of 6 seminars in the Eyes on the Future series. And this morning, we are going to be hearing from a very esteemed panel, one that I'm very excited to introduce to you. And they're going to talk to you about being engaged in positive change. And when I was thinking about this topic this morning, I thought to myself, not only our 3 panelists, but also our moderator, this could truly be a bullet point on their resumes, because these 4 people truly emulate what it means to be engaged in positive change in our community and in our region. We're very lucky to have all of them, and I know you are going to enjoy hearing from them this morning. So again, thank you for joining us. It is 9:03, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. First and foremost, thank you to our presenting sponsor, CPS Recruitment. It is only through the support of our members and our sponsors that we are able to bring quality programming like this to you. So special thanks to CPS Recruitment and their team of professionals. And with that being said, I want to introduce Evelyn Ingram. Evelyn is the Director of Community Engagement at Wegmans Food Markets. Also, somebody I am proud to call a friend. I look up to her immensely, and she is going to be our moderator this morning. So thank you, Evelyn. Take it away.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that, and I appreciate our relationship that we've shared over the years, but want to welcome everyone this morning. Hopefully this will be an enlightening time for you to really learn and understand and get a closer look to a lot of our community leaders that are here with us today. So before we get started, I wanted to just take a moment just to share just a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to ask the panelists to do the same. So as Beth shared, I do oversee community relations as well as media relations for Wegmans Food Markets. And I always share that I feel I have the best job in the country because I'm doing something that I love to do, and to do it and love it and to get paid doing it, I think is a situation that I love, that the fact that I'm in that. And so want to share that actually I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I'm from the southern shore of Long Island, in a town called Amityville. And yes, it's Amityville Horror. It's the same town, but I did grow up there, and actually that movie put us on the map because then we were known nationally because of that movie. But I actually came to Syracuse originally to attend Syracuse University as a freshman. At that time, had no intention whatsoever to stay in Syracuse. But as you can see, I've been here for many years and have been able to have a very productive and great life here. So I'm thankful for that. So what I'm going to do actually is add one thing to the intro. The panelists, if you would, as you introduce yourself, just share maybe one word or a phrase that you feel describes yourself. And I'll share my phrase, and that is something that my mother used to say to me very often as a child. And I think it probably is exemplified even in my adult life with all of the things that I'm involved in. She used to say, "I have ants in my pants." And I think that's carrying on now, because if many of you know me and all the involvement that I am here, you may think that I have ants in my pants because I can't sit still, because I love to help and do. So again, I'm going to just ask the panelists, if you would, Rob, if you would start, followed by Nan, and then Ryan, County Executive Ryan McMahon.
All right. Well, you set the tone, Evelyn. I don't usually share things like this about myself, but since you started, my parents used to say about me, you can't take the bounce out of Tigger, right? So just boundless energy, constantly moving from one thing to the next. And I think in a lot of respects that has probably carried through to me in both my personal life and my professional career. So you can't take the bounce out of Tigger. Rob Simpson, the president of CenterState CEO, really glad to be here with all of you.
Thanks, Rob.
Good morning, I'm Nan Eaton. I'm the president of the United Way of Central New York. And I will tell you that my 5 siblings would say that I was the one in the family who wanted to meet everyone. And my shy mother appreciated it because she was shy. And so she met many people through her daughter, who travel the community meeting people. I used to be embarrassed and then realized I love meeting people, and human services has been a great way for me to connect with people and be paid to be in a career.
Ryan, tell us your secret.
Sure. Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. I can't, and thank you for being here. Certainly growing up, my mother and father were concerned by how intense I was. At the age of 9, I was watching the news every day. And that certainly has carried the way throughout my own career in getting involved in public service as early as I did. So certainly if you're going to describe me, even in my style today, management style, it's intense and driven.
That I think we would agree with that, Ryan. So Ryan, just to share a little bit, did you grow up in this area?
I did. I grew up in the Strathmore neighborhood in the city of Syracuse, and have lived over on the southwest side of the city and the county my entire life.
Okay, great. So I'm listening to the intros and seeing that even as young children, we all seem to have certain traits that led us to the careers we've chosen, or whether maybe those careers chose us. But so it gives me hope that the training that you put in your children as they grow up, it will have positive impact. So I want to go ahead and get right into our talk for today. And again, as I shared, hopefully this will be informative. And I like to see, interaction. So just, I know it's virtual, but if there's things in the chat that you want to share as in the panelists are answering questions or sharing their commentary, please do that. If you want to raise your hand or clap, all the emojis that are in the system, please use them, because I do think that that does kind of help to bring engagement. So I'm going to start to kind of give our panelists an opportunity to kind of gather their thoughts. But we know that the topic is really about having our eyes on the future and being engaged. And as I was thinking about that topic, I was kind of thinking about my own personal situation and what I feel has led me to being in the position where I am in now. And position meaning just the impact. So I think part of it deals with just the mindset that I've been able to employ in my dealings in my professional life that really has helped me through that. And even during these challenging times, I think, my desire to help and to give has really been what strengthened me during these difficult times. I think obviously we came together as a community during what we never imagined to be the most challenging, say, 2 years of our lives. But because of the ability to want to help and to want to give, I think that's enabled me to be able to excel during those times. And even sharing from a Wegmans perspective, as you know, I do oversee our community engagement area, and the ability to be able to help people and to help organizations move their missions forward. Yes, that's my job, but I love doing that because the impact, the impact that it has on our community. And I'll share early on in my career at Wegmans, there was an organization that reached out, and it was actually a program where a summer program that they assist kids with disabilities during the summer, reading and math and things like that. And they were having difficulty getting the funding for that program. I guess something had fell through. And be honest with you, all they were asking for was $500. And, looked at what they wanted to do, reached out, yes, we'll do that. And I'll never forget the call I got from the executive director. She said to me, Evelyn, when I shared with my staff that we would be able to have that program and that Wegmans was supporting, literally, they jumped on the desk, applauding, just so happy to be able to do that. And that to me was telling, because from my perspective, it was just $500. But the impact that $500 had on those participants in that summer program and the staff, the energy that they had to be able to provide that let me know that regardless of what I'm doing, regardless of the amount, it's impacting people. So that really, to me, adds value to the role. It really enables me to really make sure that what I'm doing is making a difference. And I think that's what we all want, to know or feel that, what we're doing is making a difference. So I don't take my role for granted. I mean, I share with others how I said I love what I do, but I don't take that for granted because I'm thankful to be in that position because again, the impact that it's having on people and being able to recognize that what I'm doing, you know, is making an impact. Wegmans gives me a budget every year that I use to determine what the need is in our community and do that. And I'll share this, that I make sure I spend every penny of that budget every year. Because I look at it this way, if Wegmans is going to allocate that money to me to disperse, I'm going to do that. There is a great need. I wish I had more, but you know, the millions that we give each year to our community, I want to make sure that I'm supporting the Central New York region. So for me, I take that seriously. And there are even years I'll say that I've probably gone over budget. And this is the first company I've ever worked for where going over budget is okay. And I love that. So I'm able to really determine and assess that need. But I really think that for me, wanting to help and really trying to drive that change in our community is really what helps us move forward. And going back to wanting to do, even now when I thought that my role at Wegmans would be the pinnacle of my ability to give back, my husband and I are now in a venture that is going to have such significant impact on our community by renovating a church on the south side of Syracuse into a multi-use event center and being able to employ my giving spirit in that project. So I'm grateful for that. And I really want to hopefully be able to continue to make the change that I'm making even in my role here as that project continues. So that's my little opening just to share, and hopefully that was helpful to some. And so what I'm going to do is actually each of the panelists have been asked to just share 5 to 7 minutes of what your perspective is on change, how you've encountered change, really building on the future. So we will start with, I'll say, the host organization, the president. So Rob, if you can start, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you, Evelyn. It's great to be with all of you this morning. One thing I would just point out, Evelyn, is that you don't have to, from your perch at Wegmans, you don't have to give philanthropic contributions to bring joy to people. I can't tell you the number of times that I can be having a rough day, feel like we're not moving a ball forward on something important, and I'll swing by Wegmans on my way home and walk the aisles and find the ingredients to make a nice meal for my family. And that in and of itself is a way of bringing a positive influence into people's lives, being able to take those creative talents and bring some joy to my family, reset the brain a little bit. And so I think we all would agree Wegmans is a treasure in Central New York. You know, for me, being a part of positive change has just always been part of my ethos and my mentality. My parents were born in the Kennedy generation, and there was always this sentiment of, you know, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, right? That was sort of drilled into me at an early age, a public service ethos and mentality. But I think it wasn't until the mid 1990s that it really dawned on me, and I had my first personal experience with a type of change and disruption that was sufficiently negative for me to want to impact it in the future. And that was when I grew up, unlike Ryan, I didn't grow up here in Syracuse. My dad grew up on St. Louis Ave here in town, but by the time I came around, I was over in the Utica area. And in the mid 1990s, Griffiths Air Force Base shut down. And literally overnight, 5,000 people and their families and the businesses that had stood up to support them exited the Utica-Rome metropolitan area. And the impact was profound. I had friends who were in my class in high school who, you know, one semester they were there and the next semester they were gone. They relocated to North Carolina or other places. And I remember thinking to myself how completely unfair that seemed and how devastating the ultimate impact on the Utica-Rome community had been. And it wasn't until a handful of years later, after I'd gone to college and spent some time in Washington, D.C., that an opportunity presented itself back here in Syracuse to come back and actually work on issues of economic and community development in a place where, you know, that I called home. But that imprint of the human pain and disruption associated with that economic catastrophe that hit the Utica-Rome area was something that motivated me at the time. And it's something that, if I'm being totally honest, still motivates me every single day. thinking about the economy, not just in the context of macroeconomics, right? How many jobs do we have and how many people are unemployed, but understanding that each and every one of those data points has a human face to it. There are individuals who have jobs or who don't. There are people who earn a living wage or who cannot. There are people who have access to healthcare benefits, or people who are struggling to make ends meet for their families. And that human dimension associated with the work that we're doing, I think for me is a remarkably motivating factor. Understanding that in our community over the course of the last 15 to 20 years, we've seen some remarkable successes, right? I mean, you want to talk about positive change, look at Syracuse and Central New York over the last 15 to 20 years, what's happening downtown, what's happening in our advanced manufacturing sector, what's happening with our tech industry sector, right? Just this past week, Syracuse has its first $1 billion startup company, right? Density out of one of the companies in the tech garden. They've got $1 billion valuation. They started 10 years ago, and that happened right here. That tech ecosystem didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. But recognizing that despite the growth and the progress that we are making on so many fronts because of the concerted effort of coordinated leadership, we still have tremendous inequality and disequity that exists in our community. We still have people who live in poverty. 50% of the children in the city of Syracuse live in poverty. And those are problems that make, like many of the panelists here, I was raised to see a problem and identify solutions. And so for me, being an agent of positive change, right, which is what I have up on my LinkedIn header, is about acknowledging the things, even when things are good, even when things are getting better, being able to acknowledge the things that aren't working well, to be humble and to be focused on trying to bring solutions to bear so that more of our region's residents are able to share in the prosperity that we're in the process of creating. So for me, I learned a long time ago that being a part of a change culture comes with risks, right? Not everyone likes change. Change is disruptive to the status quo. Status quo doesn't like being disrupted. So when you're driving change and trying to make positive change, there will inevitably be forces that push back against you. And you know, it was something my grandfather told me probably when I was in my mid-20s. And it's a little bit less than PC, but I'll say it anyways. He said, if you're not doing something that's pissing somebody off, you're not doing anything worth doing. And I think there's absolutely truth to that, as long as you're not doing things just for the purposes of ticking people off. And so a big lesson for me as I try to be a part of positive change in Central New York is just the mirror test, right? Is what you're doing something you can get up and you can look at yourself in the mirror and you can explain to your family in an easy and simple way. If the answer is yes, then keep going and keep doing it. Put your head down and don't listen to the detractors. They will always be there. So just a few words and sort of thoughts from my perspective, and happy to hear from our other panelists.
Thanks, Rob. And we appreciate that you are a risk taker. It definitely has an impact on our community. We appreciate that. Nan, if you would, share how you positively engage.
Well, I think, Evelyn, like you, I grew up on Long Island, came to Central New York after attending the University of Buffalo. And I will tell you that I cannot imagine a better place to live. So while I'm not a native Central New Yorker, I often think those of us who are absolutely passionate about living here sometimes are the best ambassadors for this region. I grew up in a family where volunteering was a piece of what we did as a family. And so my parents definitely set the example. When I got out of college, I had the incredible honor of working at the Mental Health Association in Erie County as an advocate. And it helped me realize that human services and nonprofits were really my path. That felt absolutely like where I belonged. And then when I came to Syracuse, I had the opportunity to join a very startup nonprofit, Housing Visions Unlimited. There were 2 staff people. I became the 3rd. And now, of course, it's a very large housing developer. But along the way, I've learned a lot of things, connected with so many incredible people in this community. And I thought today, as I thought about sharing with you, I thought, this is the time of incredible change, right? We've all experienced so much. And I thought I'd share a little bit about our journey at United Way as a part of our community and what we've learned along the way. It's really a privilege and an honor to have the role that the board gave me to serve as president of the United Way. And I really feel a responsibility to the generations of Central New Yorkers who created this organization 100 years ago. So here we are carrying on that work. These community members who felt this responsibility to make sure that no one was left behind. You know, Rob talked about the need, and I wish I could tell you that in 100 years that need is gone, but it isn't. So Lisa, if you'd show the first photo, here's a little bit of Syracuse history that I thought you'd enjoy seeing. From 1962. So that photo is then Mayor William Walsh, County Executive John Mulroy, and Women's Division Chair Mimi Burdick turning Salina Street into United Way. So Lisa, the next picture shows some fun we had this past Friday when now Mayor Ben Walsh, grandson of William, County Executive Ryan McMahon, and our board chair Stephanie Crockett turned Salina Street back into United Way as we kicked off our 100th anniversary of this community working through this local nonprofit to change lives and to make sure that we took care of our neighbors. So when I came into this role 4 years ago, I felt a responsibility to the past. Thanks, Lisa, you can take that off. And also to the future. So Rob talked about change and thinking about how to become new. And so we at United Way looked at how can we take the best of the past and embrace all of the new opportunities. We brought on some incredibly talented people. We had a plan, and then we had a pandemic, right? And all of it went, woo. So we said, okay, let's think, right? As all of you, I'm sure we thought, how do we take care of our staff? How do we make sure that we continue to do everything we need to do as an organization? And how can we play a role in the community? Because obviously, United Way is the community's organization. We're a local nonprofit. And so we really looked to figure out how we could help the best. Obviously, the first calls were to and from the county executive's office, and we immediately started working to coordinate volunteers, helping disseminate information, and thinking about our amazing human service community. I do want to say, Rob mentioned going to Wegmans, and I will tell you that every day or every time I went to Wegmans, I thanked every staff member at Wegmans for working during a pandemic, because I knew I could get food for my family. I knew that our community was being served by our healthcare workers, our first responders, our human service community, and by our employees at Wegmans who kept the grocery stores going. So we really looked at communication as being the key, right? Everyone felt scared, didn't know what to anticipate. And so we immediately tried to, we couldn't do the in-person event we had planned. So we pulled together a virtual event within the first month because we knew it was so important to keep people connected. We also knew it was important to band together through the county, city's leadership, our healthcare community. So we, with a community foundation, Allen Foundation and others, created the COVID Community Support Fund, again, because people in our community wanted to help. We wanted to make it easy, so we created one fund. This community donated $1.8 million very quickly that we then got out to the nonprofits that were meeting the needs. And, you know, I will tell you that every human service agency, the workers said, I don't work in the shelter, but if you need me to be in the shelter, I'll be in the shelter. I mean, it was all in. The heroes in this community stepped forward in every possible way. We tried at United Way to use our ability to convene people and connect people. So if legal services agencies were having issues trying to figure out how to help people in housing crisis, the deputy mayor came together with us, and we had the appropriate departments work on that, because people needed information. Do you know that in this community at one point we had 2,000 people registered to get meals delivered at home? And this community, the volunteers registered to help make those meals, get those meals to people. So for us, we wanted to make sure how could we continue our normal operations? And I'll be honest, we had no idea if we were going to continue to get money. Because one of the challenges at United Way, right, is we promise money to those vital human service organizations, and then we raise the money from all of you, our caring community members. We didn't know if people would continue to donate. We didn't know if businesses would continue to be open. And yet we knew the human services network needed to be there more than ever. The county executive will tell you that. We all knew that we had to work together. So we just all kept going. And we kept looking at what are the opportunities to share information. And I have to say that I am incredibly proud of our communications team because they did an extraordinary job of finding ways to keep people connected. So Lisa, if you'll show the next series of photos, information about services in the community and trying to coordinate as much as we could was we had to show people services were still happening. And so we sent award-winning photojournalist Michael Greenlaw out to some of our programs to show our donors and our community members, people were still getting the help they needed. We weren't separated, even though we had to be safe. We were working together. We wanted folks to feel hope. Look at those faces of accomplishment, of our community continuing to keep people going together, being safe, but going together. We also at United Way felt a strong sense of community as we watched what was happening around the country. And so with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, we, like so many of you knew, we could no longer be afraid to have the hard conversations that needed to happen. And so we were proud to bring together 98 organizations and create CNY Equity. We did, as a community, the 21-day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge. 3,500 people in our community registered and then continued with us for a 12-week series. More to come, but I think what I would say, it's a privilege to be part of a community that is connected, that coordinates, that stayed together even during these hardest of times. I'm proud that we worked with CenterState and our healthcare providers most recently, and Lisa Mito has been a champion of coordinating a mental health series because the numbers are startling. 3,000% increase in mental health needs since 2019. So we know folks are struggling, and I think what I would say is I'm proud to be part of a community that has worked together to respond to needs, emerging needs, monitoring changes. We know we have housing concerns, but many things, positive changes happened during this time that I think we've learned from and will build on. New food pantries have been certified, new coordinated efforts around housing. And so I, like Rob, think every day about the needs in the community. And I know Evelyn, the county executive, do too, as we all work together. But I will tell you, I could not be more proud of Central New York as we continue to make our way through. And it's really an honor to be part of this human service community and a community that is unlike any other.
Thank you, Nan. And I personally can share, we applaud the work that you and the United Way are doing in our community. It's very impactful. And I agree that this was a time where we all came together to do whatever it was we could do to help. I recall getting the calls from county executive's office for the need of just literally needing containers to put the food in to deliver the meals to those in need. And, you know, that was just something you wouldn't even think about that. But because there was such a high magnitude, we needed to have these containers. So, you know, I worked through our chain to be able to provide that. But again, it was just all of us coming together as a community. And again, Nan, you and the United Way have been exemplary in the work that you've been doing to help move that change forward. County Executive, if you would please share your personal or professional experiences in bringing about positive change.
Yeah, thank you. Listening to Nan, you know, you forget a lot of these things that we had to do and overcome over the last really 21 months. Growing up, I grew up in a big Irish Catholic family on the Southwest side, and like Nan, volunteering was something that was instilled in us. My family actually founded the McMahon Ryan Child Advocacy Center. And so most of my volunteer work growing up was with that organization. And I got into government and elected office pretty early in life. I ran for office when I was 23. I was unsuccessful. And then 2 years later, I won a seat on the city council, and then worked my way up through the county legislature, then eventually county executive. But what got me in is something a little bit similar to what Rob was saying. You're 23, you graduate college, you grew up in this neighborhood, you love your neighborhood, and then your friends start moving away. And so you witness that, and then you really look at why, and what's going on here. And that was really the economy was changing, and we weren't really keeping up with the changes in the economy at the time. And so I got involved, and as you get more engaged and more involved, you learn, and you learn more about the challenges in the community, and you learn about more where you can have an impact. And I would say for me, I became the chairman of the legislature, I think when I was about 30 or 31 years old. At that point, I understood more of the impact I could have in county government on our community's most vulnerable, as that's really what our charge is. We take care of our young people, we take care of our seniors, and we take care of our poor. And we do so many other things, but that's really our charge. And so going forward, when I became county executive, there was really a moment in time with the leadership, with the mayor and others in the community, where everybody put down their swords. And I really understood at that point that we could have, as Nan said, the tough conversations, and we could start to address some challenges that really nobody really could in a coordinated fashion. And that was bringing all the stakeholders together to talk about poverty, to talk about what are the root causes, what are the barriers to employment that if we work as a community, we can really have an impact on. And so that's what we started to do in 2018 and 2019. And then the pandemic happened. And I've told this story before, but it was really the moment in my life where I knew my life would fundamentally change for at least a long period of time. I was at a National Association of Counties convention in Washington, D.C., and I was on a panel on talking about early childhood and all of our early childhood initiatives that we were doing here in the county. And on the panel with me was the Grand Rapids County Administrator, but also the Kings County County Executive, which Kings County is Seattle, Washington. And he joined the room and joined the panel. He got a phone call, and then he left. And after he left, we said, well, what happened? And that was when the first cases in the country were found in the nursing homes in Seattle, Washington. And that conference quickly turned into briefings with the CDC, with the White House, starting to talk about what this means. There was certain planning that was done from our emergency management team before looking at this before that conference, but we didn't know what we didn't know. And so at that point, everything became about this new kind of moral responsibility when you're talking about public health. And so we quickly shifted from planning to preparing and then eventually mitigating before we had cases of COVID. And during that time, we had to do things that no other communities ever had to do, really. If you think about it, even 100 years ago, life was so different. So you're mitigating before a virus comes. You're then responding. You're trying to respond in an equitable fashion to avoid some of the health disparities that traditionally happen. We did that opening up the first drive-through testing site in our city's south side. Then you're learning about this virus. Then you're eventually shutting down a whole community. And then you had to open up a community. And then you had to really start to stare down while you're still responding to a virus, what all of the pandemic impacts are. Because it wasn't just about people getting sick. It was about people who needed services and specifically in-person services, and they couldn't get those. And so what we've seen, Nan referenced it with the mental health challenges we have in the community, but we saw suicide rates explode. Our opioid crisis is now worse than it ever was, directly related to the pandemic. And so you had all these things, but what we did well as a community is we worked together so well, from our human services coalitions to our hospitals having to work together and our medical community in ways they never had to before. Our political leaders worked very, very well together, and we all had to do that. And because of that, we did well with this virus, and we've done well on starting to recover. And when you want to think about the opportunities for positive change moving forward, we've had the tough conversations. We know that there's issues. We know that there's communities that have been underinvested in. We know the areas where we need to invest moving forward. But because we've had to work together in so many ways and develop these new relationships, we're better positioned now to address these issues in a real transformative way than we were before the pandemic. And I think that's really the biggest opportunity, which drives me and our team, is we had to meet the moment, as we say in our office, every day, no matter how hard it was, no matter what the emotional toll was, and we did it. And now in all of your own lives, you did it too, whether it's your personal lives or whether it's your professional careers. You all met that moment in your own way, and now we're so much more resilient from that, and we're so much better prepared to address problems that seemed so hard to address before the pandemic, but really aren't that hard if you think about it now, as long as we work together and we continue to work together and communicate and invest where we need to invest. And that's really what keeps me motivated moving forward. The progress that we've made as a community over the last 10 years is exceptional. And the opportunities in front of us are beyond exceptional. And if we continue to do this in a smart way, we'll be able to do this in an inclusive way. And we'll see some of these historic black eyes in our community when we look at these poverty rates and concentrated poverty. We'll be able to address this. So that's really what fires me up, quite honestly, about the next 4 or 5 years, with all these opportunities, really staring us in the face.
Thank you, County Exec. So that really ignites us, as we're seeing that even in challenging times, difficult times, some positive things came out. And I like how the county executive shared that you had to take your swords down. It was time for that. So I'm going to ask, actually, and I guess I'll direct this probably to Rob and to Ryan, County Executive Ryan McMahon. If you would share how that happened. I mean, that doesn't just happen overnight. What was that like to get our community to come together? So people basically taking their swords down, as you described. What was that like? So
I'll share a perspective, and I'm sure Ryan will have a different sort of line of sight to it. But from where I sit, I've been doing some version of this job for 18 years, and I can honestly say that during that period of time, it has only been during the last 3 or 4 years where leadership at the top of the city and county, our federal representatives, our state representatives, truly have stopped viewing themselves as political rivals and have started viewing themselves as allies in the cause of helping to improve Central New York. And I'll give a lot of credit to the county executive and to the mayor for setting that tone. I won't name names, but we can look back at various previous administrations in the county and the city, and oftentimes the communication between them was on the front page of the newspaper. That doesn't happen, right? When was the last time you saw a communication between the city and the county on the front page of the newspaper, right? They talk behind the scenes. There's a lot of dialogue. And so I think there is something to be said for the tone at the top is set, which is an expectation that we will collaborate. There will be differences of opinion, and that's okay. But most of that is going to be worked out behind the scenes. And the North Star is going to be, are we moving our community forward or not whether this is good for someone politically, or, how can I wound someone so that I improve myself? That mentality, frankly, is outdated. It's what they do in Washington. It's frankly disingenuous. And I'm really proud of the fact that that's not the approach that our community leadership right now is taking in Central New York.
That's awesome. County Exec?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot with what Rob said. I think one of the things that was nice is the mayor and I have known each other our whole lives. So there's a level of trust there. And so when we took these roles, we were both involved in various ways with some of the unhealthy dialogue that Rob referenced before. And so we understood the opportunity. And I think what happens though is when you start to have success and you start to get wins, that becomes contagious, and people want to be involved with that. And they look at the approach and they see that the approach is working. So I think that, when the mayor and I started to get together and we started to bring the business community together, we started to get economic development wins, we started to get human capital wins, infrastructure wins. Others want to get involved with that. And so I think that's really something that makes us special. And we get that feedback, not just from people within the community, but when we're making our pitch to those from outside the community that are considering coming here and investing here, they can feel that and they can see that, and that is unique. And so that's a strength for us now. And it starts at the government level, but then it's fostered its way through every segment of our community, though. In the business community, in the human services community, we referenced the healthcare community. What used to be seen as potential rivals are now seen as allies, and how we can work together. So I think that's why that approach is contagious, and I think it's a big part of why we see a lot of the success and the growth and collaboration in Central New York right now.
So basically, personal siloed agendas turned into one common agenda, which is what we're seeing now. And have you seen that from a nonprofit perspective?
I absolutely have. I mean, I think that, it's difficult when organizations are struggling to raise money, right? So there's sort of that notion of, are they in competition? And yet the reality is folks don't choose to go into human services because they think they're going to make a lot of money, because they know they're not. So they go into it because they have this sense of some sort of a calling. And I have to say that the human service community is absolutely coordinating more than ever. And I'm really proud to say, if you think about what we've accomplished with our government leadership and Rob and the incredible team at CenterState with Dominic, and the partnerships with the nonprofit community and the business sector. So we have incredible collaborations doing things that are really looking at our community's biggest issues. So we started with literacy, right, with the Literacy Coalition of Onondaga County. Then the Work Train Initiative, which has been spearheaded by CenterState with the support of our elected officials. And we're proud to be part of that as well. So there's a lot of really important work going on, and I couldn't agree more. I will share, and I think I've told Ryan this, but when folks used to say, oh, you'll see the county and the exec and the mayor will stop talking, that's what happens. They're talking at first and then they stop. And my response was, not these two guys, because their mothers will whoop their butts if they start playing those games. Their mothers will pull them right back into line. But truly, we certainly have seen such positive change, and we have incredible leadership in the human service community, and folks are really all focusing on the big issues. And we're fortunate to have a community that's working on it together.
Good. Yeah. Well, I think we're learning the value of good parenting, right? It keeps us all in a good direction. I even was great to hear that I had read on social media where there was a group of fathers who were going into the schools I think it was down south somewhere, going into the schools to kind of help monitor kids' behavior. And I believe that we're doing that at one of our high schools here. Fathers are coming in just to kind of be that parental control over our children. So we see the value of that. So let's talk a little bit about, what we as individuals in the community can do. So what are some things that you would envision people within your realm of responsibility can do to help bring about this change. So I ask, County Exec, if you would answer from a political perspective, those in the political arena, Rob, if you would answer those in the business community, and then Nan, if you would answer for those in the nonprofit world. So again, what can people do? What can companies do? What can individuals do to kind of help bring about this change for our community? I'll start with Rob. He's like, great.
Start with the county exec. I was going to make notes. I was going to be all prepared. What can business leaders do? I think there's a lot of things. I think one thing that I've been inspired by, right? I never thought that I'd be running a regional economic development organization, Chamber of Commerce. That wasn't my career path. That wasn't what I set out to do when I was a kid. But I've fallen in love with the platform for one very specific reason, and that is that business respond to markets, and while we can make policy, we can make regulations, and we can pass laws, they only last as long as the people in power, right? But markets drive lasting and sustainable change, at least in a capitalistic society. And so the extent to which we can help business leaders understand the market value in leading, I think that's been a big piece of the reward for me in this job. Fundamentally, what has happened during the pandemic has been a reworking of the compact between employers and employees. And there are many who would argue that compact was long overdue to be reworked. There's a lot of great economic data that shows just how completely discrepant, starting in the 1970s, worker productivity continued to increase at significant rates, and wages stopped increasing anywhere close to that rate. For the 100 years prior, they've been pegged to each other. Worker productivity goes up, wages go up. And there's a lot of economic reasons for that, but fundamentally, what we are in a moment right now is where workers have sort of reclaimed some of that power, and they're asking not just for additional wages, but they're asking for workplace flexibility, and they're asking for childcare, and they're asking for other things that are sort of basic accommodations to allow them to both be productive employees, but also to live their lives and to understand that life outside of work is okay. So I think first and foremost, I would say to business leaders, recognize that we're in a moment where the landscape has shifted. And if you're going to be successful as an employer, you need to think about how to accommodate that demand from the labor force. Two, employees care about a lot of things outside of their jobs, and the extent to which you can acknowledge those things and value those things and bring those experiences into the workplace, your labor force will appreciate it immensely. Whether that's being involved in issues of racial and social justice, or at least at a minimum, not being afraid to speak out and speak to them, whether it's about empowering your employees to volunteer in the community, organizing volunteer work days or cleanup days in neighborhoods. Those are all things I think that allow you as an employer both to build a bond with your employees, but also to do things that are positive for our community. The third thing I would just say to all business leaders, we all have our frustrations, and there are many in our world, whether we're struggling to find workers or whether we can't get a permit pulled in the city or whatever that may be. At the end of the day, every single person who's on this call and every one of our business leaders is an advocate or a detractor for Central New York. And I think over the years, there has been far too many people who've been inclined to lead with the negative about our region and to leave the many positive attributes out of the lead of their messaging. I'm seeing that changing, and I'm encouraging people to be more intentional about changing that. I think the county executive said it, right? A couple of wins, momentum builds. It matters what you say, and it matters what you lead with, and it matters how you feel and how you project the community out into the ecosystem. Because business leaders who are thinking about investing here outside of Central New York, they hear that message. They read it on the front page of the newspaper, or they hear it at a conference. You're either a champion and a booster for our region or you're not. And I encourage people to bring that positive energy. There's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot on the horizon for Central New York. And I want to see as many people engaged in telling that story and manifesting that destiny as we possibly can.
That's good. So county exec, if you would share how you would engage those in the political arena as to what they can do to bring about positive change.
Yeah, I think my advice, and gave it to some recently elected city councilors. I really share with anybody, but in my experience, those who are in my line of work that have goals and know why they're there are effective. And those who don't have goals are just disruptive and they get caught in the weeds and everything. So I think my advice goes to anybody. Develop in your year. Every year I have to prepare a state of the county address, and that's going to drive my budget priorities for the year. And then that's where I'm going to go fight for those priorities with to get the funding, whether it's at the state, federal, or local level. But have your short, mid, and long-term goals, and then you need to find a way to hold yourself accountable, so that you see how you're making, what progress you're making on those. And I love when I have a local legislator or a city councilor or a town board member that has a goal and they want to come in and talk about it, how we can get there. Because that's how you build relationships when you're working together on those and trying to make things work out. So that would be my advice for anybody. For me, the scariest thing is a county legislator that doesn't have a goal and has nothing to talk about. They just show up and vote, because then that's when they're most susceptible to the partisan political wins.
Have a goal. That's pretty simplistic, but true. Just knowing where you're going, knowing where you want to go makes a lot of sense. Nan, how about you? For those in the human services arena, what advice would you give them to help them know what to do to engage positive change?
Well, I think what I would say is, as we think about our community, many of our employees throughout the community, whether they're working in for-profit businesses or nonprofits, are really living paycheck to paycheck, right? And so how can we help folks get information about services that are available? How can we help people improve their own situation, whether they're in human services or not? So we have the Syracuse Financial Empowerment Center, which is a way for people to learn how to live their better financial life. And it's something Syracuse can be really proud of. Everybody wants to help. I mean, I think no matter what you do for a living, people want to help. And so at United Way, we want to make it easy. So we have volunteersny.org. But as employers, I think even in nonprofits, find out what your employees really care about. I like what Rob said, and I completely agree. Let your employees be involved in the community. Employees want to work somewhere where they have that opportunity, and let them pick their passion. There's a nonprofit to connect with of just about anything. Everybody has gifts to share. And I think that our nonprofit community embraces people who care and want to make a difference. So whether you can do a project to support a particular nonprofit, whether you want to go out and help people get food out on the streets, there are many ways. But for the nonprofit community, I would say, let's all think about how we can sustain funding so that we can pay them better wages, because our nonprofit workers really are among those living paycheck to paycheck the most. And so while they're doing this work, I'm hoping that we can support them in all of the ways that the community can do, by volunteering, by making donations, and sticking with an organization, I would say, is one of the best things you can do. Find something that really matters to you and stick with it. And tons of ways to get involved.
Yes, lots of ways. So I'll share when we talk about our community coming together. One of the things that I believe, I'm not going to say it had never happened before, but I know is something that hadn't always happened, is having nonprofit organization representatives on the CenterState CEO board. I think that's very impactful. Obviously, Nan actually is on that board, and I think that was a really good step in the right direction. Again, trying to bring the business community together with the nonprofit community. So I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit. I know we've been talking about how great things are and how everybody's coming together and working together, and we're all playing, in the sandbox together and sharing and things like that. But I know, being humans, that you all are facing negativity. You'll face naysayers, you'll face criticism, you'll face those who are standing on the sidelines, watching you, hoping that you'll fail. So I'm going to ask, and you can do it in whatever order you want, for the three panelists, please share how you deal with that. How do you deal with that negative criticism, naysayer bunch of people? We'll say we know they exist. How do you manage that? And I see Ryan has his speaker off, so we're going to let him start.
Yeah, no, I've gotten good at this.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, I would get an email with somebody complaining, and I would try to respond and convince them why they were wrong and I was right. But during these processes, right, you develop thick skin. And the way I always judge something, I'll do whether it's a COVID briefing or whether it's just updating something on social media related to the pandemic. If the fringe elements of both political spectrums are both mad at me, I think I'm doing what I should be doing. And that's usually what happens. So I think overall, if no matter what you're doing, if your intentions are good, and we're not always successful. Every initiative we do isn't always going to be as successful as we want it to be. But your intentions were pure, then that's okay. It's okay to fail, and we get back up and we do it again. But overall, criticism's tough, especially when it's not constructive. And that's kind of, I think, as a society in many ways where we are. But take it with a grain of salt. And I think Rob mentioned earlier, look in the mirror. Were you being intentional to try to have positive change in your organization, in your own personal lives, or your community? And if you were, just take it for what it was. Somebody having a bad day, or somebody who has multiple bad days in a row, speaking out of line, really. So and develop that thick skin, knowing that you're doing the right thing.
Has that been hard, Ryan? I mean, I know we say that developing thick skin, but we're human. So have you developed that, and how did you do that?
Yeah, I did. I was in a unique role, right, where you had the pressure of a community in so many different ways on your shoulders for an extended period of time. But in the beginning of the pandemic, people used to send me these crazy emails, and I would make a joke out of them, and I'd read them out loud. And it takes a lot. You're human still. Sometimes people really, they hit you hard in a personal way, and that's harder. But you really just need to be comfortable in your own skin, and just know where your heart is. And if you do that, you'll be okay. What I did learn this, though, and people should do this. I live by my own advice almost all the time, but when you get an email or you get one of those, you can respond, just don't press send. Give yourself about 15 minutes or a half hour to think about it, because those don't go away. But it's tough when you're out there, you're putting yourself out there, you're trying to do the right thing, and people are taking shots at you. But that's kind of the state of play in the world we live in now.
I like that, Ryan.
I got a 24-hour rule, right? If it's just goofy, I can respond right away. If it's mean and spiteful, which we all get them, 24 hours. And I will write 4 different responses over that 24-hour period. Like my immediate response, which is usually pretty cutting, and then I'll successively sort of find myself again, right? Which is just respond and be a good, honest, decent person, and you'll probably won't agree, but it's better than putting something out there into the world that'll last forever that doesn't reflect who you really are, right? It's interesting. So we said, find your, be true to yourself and look yourself in the mirror. Like the other test that I use is just like my kid, right? So Ben is the center of my world, and if I can look him in the eye and explain what I did and why I'm doing it, and I can tell him I'm trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, then I'm good with it. People can criticize me all they want, and they often do. But if I feel that way, and I feel like I can look him in the eye, then my technique is I visualize myself as water running downhill. I'm water running downhill. I'm starting at the top of the mountain, and I'm a rainfall, right? And there's no force on earth that is going to hold you back, right? You're going to go over it, or you're going to go under it, or you're going to go through it, or you're going to go around it. And a lot of the times, I don't know how I'm going to get to where I need to go, but if I believe in where I'm going, I'm water running downhill. And so all the rest of it is just, it's distraction that's thrown in front of you with the intent of trying to stop you from achieving your goal. And if you believe enough in that goal and you believe it's the right thing, then you just got to visualize in a way that that you can't be stopped. But again, you always got to hold in mind that North Star, doing the right things.
So Evelyn, I think, you know, in my career, one of the things I have found in everything I've done is that people will say things that I know are not correct, right? And certainly in the last number of years, we've had a country that's sort of gone in that direction of just facts don't actually mean anything anymore in the larger scheme of things. So what I've tried to do in my career, when someone says something, you know, and often I don't have the benefit of reflecting an email response because I might be at a community meeting and someone says something, and I'm sure both of you have, all three of you have had that. But what I've tried to do when people have said things that are bigoted or I know they're wrong, you know, 20 years ago, people would say things like, oh, people on public assistance live the high life. They spend $1,000 on rent and blah, blah. Well, of course, the reality was they got about $300 a month to find somewhere to live. So I would just every opportunity try to have the facts. So, you know, not in an aggressive way, but just try to help share information in a way that I hoped maybe I could help people understand. And for so long in this community, I heard people say, everybody's working in silos, nobody's working together. And so I would just try I've always tried in a positive way, instead of saying you're wrong, to say, well, how about this thing that's happening, like work train, right? All these great examples, pathways for. So I try to tell people about the exciting things that are happening. And I think, you know, the best advice is to find people who agree with you that the glass is at least half full, lock arms, and just keep going. I mean, I think there's always going to be people who, for some reason, are trying to see the world through that lens of negativity. But I think there are many of us that are looking in positive ways. And I think just try to, it's hard because we've become, I think, a society that argues all the time. And I think instead of being angry or being emotional, which is hard not to do, but if we can just try to be really positive and share information as we can, but then just keep going. I mean, I think you just have to keep going. And if folks don't want to join you, I mean, I've had donors call me, to be honest, and say, I don't like that you're doing that, so I'm not giving you money anymore. And so if we know it's the right thing to do, then we keep doing it. And I think that's right. That's the North Star.
So it's following your heart, it's being confident in the decisions that you're making, and knowing that you are making positive change. It would help you deal with the negativity, which is great. I've shared that, you know, there's that saying that says, ignorance is bliss. So I say, I stay happy because I don't allow those things to come within my circle. So I just stay blissful. I'm not going to get into that. So I'm going to ask one last question of the panelists, and then we're going to open it up for discussion. So as a reminder, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you'd like to verbalize them, just raise your hand and I can acknowledge you that way. So we got some great things going on in our community, some great projects. I think some of them you've heard about, some of them you may not have heard about, but I'm going to ask the panelists if you would talk about some of these exciting projects that we have on the horizon for our community. Maybe I'll start with Nan, and then we'll go to Rob, and then we'll let County Executive bring up the rear.
I would share two quick things. One is that, as I said, we partnered with CenterState and our healthcare community to do a mental health educational series. And we're going to be continuing to look at sort of CNY wellness. How can we help share information with folks? So we're excited about that. And the other I'll share, of course, we're kicking off our 100th year anniversary of celebration, but what we just launched last week that we're very excited about is a local effort to help young people understand the kinds of career opportunities that are out there. So we're partnering with Hillside Work Scholarship, and we've started bringing speakers to their after-school program so that kids can meet an architect, they can meet a nurse, they can meet people from a variety of professions and have a chance in 7th, 8th, 9th grade to realize, oh, school is a pathway. I have gifts already that I can become an architect, an engineer, a nurse, a welder, an electrician. So we're excited to be launching this series and bringing people from the business community to the kids so that they really can understand there's so many options in the future, and maybe they don't know what an architect does, but they might be happy in the future as an architect.
That's awesome, Nan. It's great.
Yeah, I'd sort of layer on. I'm as bullish about Central New York as I've ever been, and most of you know me to be a pretty optimistic person. There's just there's so many remarkable opportunities that we're chasing. I won't steal the county executive's thunder, but just on our front, we've got the Tech Garden expansion, right? We just had our first $1 billion unicorn out of the Tech Garden. We're going to build that building bigger and higher, and so we can support more companies and generate more businesses that'll help continue to put Syracuse on the map for our tech ecosystem. We've got the Interstate 81 project that is coming soon. That's going to circulate a couple of $1 billion through our regional economy. You think about the impact that's going to have on small businesses throughout Central New York. $2 billion, the largest infrastructure project in our region's history, circulating through our economy over a period of 5 or so years. I think that's a huge thing that I know many people are enthusiastic and excited about. And I just want to keep the collaboration that we have going right now. It really, I've worked in periods where the collaboration wasn't strong, and I've now worked in a period where it is. And I'll just say it's a lot more fun right now when people are getting along. It's so much more fun. And most importantly, we are way more effective when we work together than when we don't. So, those are 3 things I'm super excited about.
Yeah, just to echo what Rob was saying, we've experienced probably really in 2019 some of the biggest economic development wins we had in at least a decade. When you think about what JMA Wireless is doing in our South Side with a new state-of-the-art campus, really being one of the only 5 approved 5G manufacturers of that technology in the country. So the opportunities there are really transformative. But if you look at what the Amazon investment was, we have 3 Amazon investments right now. We have essentially 2,000 jobs that are going to be able to be filled. We have employment opportunities for people in our existing high-tech manufacturing space and our existing logistics space. So really, for the first time that I can remember, we have the jobs. We need to now tie in the workforce to the jobs. We need to get our residents trained for these opportunities, and that's a pathway out of poverty for these residents. So that's extremely exciting. We are in a unique position now where we're competing for the really one of 2 of the largest economic development investments in the country's history, actually the 2 largest, at our White Pine Business Park in Clay, where we're very, very close to potentially winning a large semiconductor investment. And that will transform everything. We'll see, if we're successful, we'll see population growth like we've never seen before. The economic opportunity will be there. And all these companies are very intentional. They share the same values we have about trying to address systemic poverty. So I'm so excited for what we've accomplished already, but the fact that we're competing at an international level for these types of investments is a proof of concept in our community, not just a site, but that companies, the greatest technology companies in the world, don't not see themselves in a community like ours. They can see themselves here, which means we should, kind of change the attitude we have about ourselves moving forward.
Great, we got some great things going on. County exec, you're excited about the castle too, right?
I love your project.
Thank you. So I love it too. I'm trying to keep up the energy to make it happen. So let's do Q&A. Are there any questions? I'm trying to see if we have any questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions? Appreciate everybody being here. So I'm gonna ask for closing comments. If we don't have any questions, I'm not one to prolong the time. So I guess I'll ask this to our three panelists, and I'm going to ask you to start with County Executive, then Rob, then Nan. If people were moving to this area and there was a family that's contemplating coming to this area, what would you say to them to encourage them to make the leap and come to Syracuse, move to this region?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, we have great neighborhoods, we have great schools, we have 4 seasons, and we have natural resources really unlike any other region in the whole country that we sell ourselves short on. It's an amazing community to raise a family, and for the first time in probably 2 generations, there's the economic opportunity in various different economic sectors to meet the needs and interests of that family as well. So this is a great place to live, and we have a lot going for us now, and it's only going to get better.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say all of those things plus buy your house now, because real estate's only going to get more valuable, and someone who moves here today is going to see price appreciation like they did in Phoenix in 1992 if they get in now. And so I really do believe that there is a huge amount of upside for our region, and people who are coming here, unlike in larger metros, and this is my own personal experience, leaving DC and coming back to Syracuse. On an individual level, you can make a difference in the community that you're living in. And there's something really special about that. There's something that you can't replicate in a bigger place. There's something that allows you to be in tune and connection with the place that you and your family live. And that's special. And I'd encourage people who haven't known anything other than living in a big city to come and check out what life is actually really like when you don't have an hour-long commute, and you run into people at Wegmans who you know and have conversations with like actual human beings. So it's amazing what you can experience in a place like Syracuse.
And I would say all of the above, what was just said, but for me, I've heard people refer to Syracuse as a Goldilocks community, right? And I couldn't agree more. It's big enough that there are plenty of things to do. It's diverse in its offerings, and yet it's not so big that you're anonymous or invisible. You'll never go to Wegmans and not run into someone which sometimes when you're in a hurry is hard. But, when my son moved to Tennessee for a few years, he missed Wegmans more than he missed his mother. But truly, this really is the perfect size community. And I think that, proof of concept that Ryan talked about, it's not only true in terms of business and government, it's also true in terms of quality of life. When people here talk about traffic, I laugh because they've never dealt with the Long Island Expressway or DC traffic where my sisters live. So this is an amazing place to live, and it's only going to get better.
That's awesome. And I'll share that companies actually use Wegmans as a recruiting tool. So we've had sometimes set up tours of our stores, because when people come from other markets where there isn't a Wegmans like supermarket, they're amazed. So I'll share, if I had to say something, I would say that where else can you go in the world where you can experience all 4 seasons in one day? Thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to Beth at this time, but thank you all for coming.
Evelyn, thank you. As always, you were fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for your agreeing to moderate this dynamic panel. A special thanks to Nan Eaton, to my boss, Rob Simpson, and to County Executive Ryan McMahon. The leadership that you all have shown, especially over the last 18 months, has been nothing short of inspiring. So thank you very much. And I've gained so much from this panel, as I'm sure all of our attendees have. So thank you for your participation. Thank you to CPS Recruitment, our presenting sponsor for this event. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.